Welcome back, fellow collectors. Caitlin and I were really scouring through our purchases over the last several months, and there were a few coins that I had set aside that I kind of surprised her with. When she saw these, she said, "Oh my goodness, we've got to put this in the next email blast." So we've got them here, folks. So we've got 5 pieces, 4 of which are Everest coins, and these are the kind of coins that, you know, I've spent many decades going through literally millions of proof Franklin and Kennedy half dollars, millions of mint state Franklin half dollars. These are the kind of coins that they are of such a quality that I've never personally found examples comparable in quality to the pieces I have today. So they are sensational coins, and we have them at a really collector-friendly price for you. I'm going to start with the first coin here. It's the 1948 P. It's graded by PCGS MS66 Plus FBL. Now they have graded some examples in 6.7 FBL at PCGS. However, every one I've seen, and to my knowledge, every single one, and we're not talking about a lot of coins, maybe a dozen or so, have been toned. This coin is fully brilliant. It's magnificent. I mean, 1948, that was the first year of the Franklin series. So these were low mintage coins, folks. Only 3 or 4 million examples were struck, and you have to remember they were struck for commerce. Almost all of them went into circulation. However, there were a handful of collectors that put some original rolls that came from the mint. They were shipped to the banks across the country, and some collectors, went to their local bank and bought some original bank-wrapped rolls, and they put them away. And that's how you find a fully brilliant Franklin like this in 6.6 plus FBL. The thing is, Franklins are typically very baggy coins, and I've had some original 48P rolls over the years. I've never personally found one so close to perfection as this coin here. It's fully struck, fully brilliant surfaces. It's absolutely a magnificent piece. And we've got it at what I think is just a great, great price. The second coin is incredible. It's the same grade as the first coin, 6.6 plus FBL, but it's a 49P. What makes this coin so rare? Every high-grade 49P you see is from an original mint set. 1949, that was the second year of the issue. Very few collectors bothered putting original rolls, 49P, D, or S Franklins away. Very few. That's why if you look on the gray sheet, you'll see very, very high bids for 49P, D, and S rolls. They might be $800 to $1,000 or more for a roll. But those are not original rolls. Those, if you buy one of those, they're what I call put-together rolls. You know, a guy will find a 49P here or there in a dealer's case, and he'll accumulate them. And when he gets 20, he'll put them in a roll and sell them, at a roll bid, and he'll make a little profit because maybe he paid MS60 bid for the coins. So almost all of those rolls you see are not original rolls. An original 49P roll, folks, I've only had a handful over the last 35 years of original rolls. And they're typically very baggy. They're not as nice quality as the 48Ps. And I've only had a couple examples that graded 6.5 FBL. This coin is as close to flawless as any 49P I've ever seen. It's just incredible. A 49P in just 6.5 FBL is a very, very rare coin. This 6.6 plus FBL, finest known, I believe it's the only 6.6 plus FBL graded by PCGS. In fully brilliant condition. There is a little touch of russet right along the top of the coin there, kind of a burgundy color. Very nice, pleasing little touch there added right at the top around 12 o'clock on the obverse of the coin. Overall, the coin is just a sensational, brilliant specimen. Really, if you're building a brilliant Franklin set, this is a must-have. This coin is just absolutely irreplaceable. The third coin here. Yes. Struck from die number 1 in my Cameo and Brilliant Proof Coinage book, my very first book. This is Cameo die number 1 because it's called die number 1 because it's the first cameo die pictured in my first book on page 35. Now, this coin was actually in another grading services holder, they had graded it 6.6 cameo. I wanted it in the NGC holder because NGC now recognizes these top cameo dies, as I've spoken about in another one of my presentations. And this is the first cameo die pictured in the book. It's one of the die number 1 doesn't mean it's the finest cameo Franklin die. It means it's one of the finest dies if you get an early strike. This coin is a very early strike. It's not among the earliest strikes. If you get one of the really earliest strikes, it'll grade ultra cameo. This is just maybe 30, 40 coins later off the die. It's a really high-end cameo, folks. It's borderline ultra cameo off die number 1. It's just a magnificent example of the 1950. What also makes it spectacular is you've got the snow white frost, but it's the deep mirrors off this die that really set it off. The mirrors on this 1950 die, these early strikes, are just black, which you usually don't see on a 1950 proof Franklin. It's just spectacular eye appeal. Coin number 4 here, this next 1950, is easily among the finest cameo 1950s I've ever handled. It's off cameo die number 3. This die is spectacular if you get among the earliest strikes. I remember going back into the early 1980s. A dealer had a complete Franklin set, 1950 to 1963, and they were nice coins. Most of them had some cameo contrast, but his 1950 was off this top die. And this is back in the early 1980s, folks. I paid $12,000 for this set. I figured the other 1951 and 1963 were worth maybe a couple $1,000s. I figured the value of that coin at around $10,000. And this was, again, the early 1980s. And that coin it was an early strike like this piece, but it did have a very obvious glue spot on the top of Franklin's temple. Fortunately, because it was a frosted portrait, it wasn't that obvious, but there was a glue spot there, and it was probably a proof 65 quality coin. This thing is very conservatively graded by NGC. It is the finest known example graded by NGC, certified off this top die number 3, proof 66 ultra cameo. The coin borders on perfection. It's, again, among the first strikes, which is why it grades ultra cameo. It's among the first strikes in essentially flawless condition, a couple little hairlines in the field. All the decades I've gone through 1950 proof sets on my own. I've gone through thousands of 1950 sets. I've never had a cameo Franklin that comes 1950 cameo Franklin that comes even close to this coin in being an early strike this flawless. I had one early strike that was maybe a proof 62. It was an early strike, very heavily hairlined, and that's what you typically found in these early years. If you were lucky to find an early strike, they would be very heavily hairlined because of the packaging used back then, which was quite inferior. I mean, those little box sets were very, very inferior packaging. So to get one this pristine, it's just a miracle. This coin should not exist. If you want to build a top cameo Franklin set, top registry set, this is a must-have coin. It's just absolutely irreplaceable. And then we have the final coin. I love the 1971 Kennedy year. My first book is 1950 to 1970 cameo and brilliant proof coinage. And boy, I thought long and hard about extending it to like 1973 because I knew, especially that first year after 1970, 1971, I knew the 1971 Kennedy was really difficult with exceptional cameo contrast. I stopped it at 1970 simply because I hadn't researched the 71s and 72s quite enough to feel I could write intelligently about them. This is why I'm working on my Encyclopedia of United States Proof Coins that will be published by Whitman. It's going to be a great book, but it's going to include a lot of these later dates with information like this 1971. This is among the earliest strikes. There are only 64 examples graded by NGC in 6.9 Ultra Cameo, folks. By comparison, the first year of issue of the Kennedy series, 1964 Type 2s, there's around 120 in 6.9 Ultra Cameo, and that's a tough coin. I love getting those examples when I can. I only handle a few a year. 71S is about twice as difficult. In case I haven't mentioned it, anyone who acquires one of these top Cameo Franklins or Kennedy half dollars, that's an Everest coin, you will get a signed copy of my very first book, Cameo and Brilliant Proof Coinage of the 1950 to 1970 era. Again, I have a limited number of these copies remaining. It's one of the reasons, so many exciting things happening in the Franklin and Kennedy series, that this next book I'm working on will be an actual encyclopedia of Franklin and Kennedy half dollars. And it's going to be an encyclopedic format. It's going to be a very large book, about the size of this book, color throughout. And I'm also working on the Encyclopedia of United States Proof Coins, which will include all the denominations of proof coins struck by the U.S. Mint, the cents through the dollars, including the Morgan dollars, which will be, we'll have some information on Morgan dollars for all you collectors. So that's all in the works right now. We've got 5 great coins, but the rest of the coins in the email blast are sensational as well, but these are really, really super special. I hope you're able to pick at least one of them up. Thanks for watching.